Hello, everyone. Welcome to the IRT pre-show chat for the book club play by Karen Zacarías. And I'm very excited to say that we are joined today by the playwright herself, Karen Zacarías. She is one of the most produced playwrights in the United States. She has many award-winning plays, including The Copper Children, Destiny of Desire, Native Gardens, Legacy of Light, Mariella in the Desert, The Sins of Sorwana, and she's written adaptations of Just Like Us, Into the Beautiful North, and How the Garcia Girls Lost Their Accent. She's the author of 10 musicals for young audiences and the librettist of several ballets, which I'm curious about that. She's one of the inaugural resident playwrights at Arena Stage in Washington, D.C., where she lives. She's a core founder of the Latinx Theater Commons and a founder of Young Playwrights Theater. And she was voted by Washingtonian Magazine as one of the 2018 Washingtonians of the Year for her advocacy work in the arts. Welcome, Karen. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're excited to be producing your play. Audiences who have sharp memories may remember that a couple years ago, before COVID, we had announced that we were going to produce Karen's play, Native Gardens.
That's right.
Then with all of the things that happened, we had to completely change our season. And of course, COVID is deeply affecting how we program now. So I'm sure we're going to produce that play somewhere down the road. But meanwhile, for now, we're opening our season and returning to live performances after a year and a half with the book club play, which is a delightful comedy. We had our first preview performance last night and the audience loved it. And the actors were just thrilled. And so we're starting the journey again. It's very exciting. Karen, I want to ask you, what led you to become a playwright?
Oh, wow. Big fat question.
Just that question.
Well, I've always wanted to be a writer since I was 6 years old, and growing up in Mexico, I used all the money that the tooth fairy left for me to buy a really old plastic typewriter. And I always wanted to be a writer. I realized about becoming a playwright was a little bit later, in the sense that I'm an extrovert. So the idea of being in a room with people who are alive, bringing characters to life through actors is something that I really, really enjoy. And when I moved to this country when I was 10, I had a bully in my life that kept saying really mean things to me. And I was so little and kind of grasping the English language, etc., that I'd go home and write responses to what I would say to him. So I had this little dialogue going with this little bully. And but then I started wondering why he was mean to me, and I came up with a backstory for him and blah, blah, blah. So I wrote this play about this bully. And so the next time I ran into him, I had so much compassion for him, because I don't know if anything I wrote was true, but the story I made up for why he was being such a jerk to me worked for me. So I was already doing the idea of what dialogue can do and how that can build bridges and understanding and all of that. So I was a natural dramatist.
You were. It's just instinct for you. That's such a beautiful story about how you felt sympathy for the guy bullying you. I hope you got him to stop bullying you in some way.
Yeah, I don't remember that part. You know what I mean? I remember that part of this. I think he just, after a while, because I was no longer reacting and getting upset about him, I was like, oh, how are things with your family? I think he kind of, just kind of left me alone. So
that's a great strategy. That's really good. That's really good. What inspired you to write a play about a book club?
I'm in a book club. I'm in a co-ed book club, and I've been in one since we started forming it, being the nerdy people we are, at the brunch after our wedding. We were all having such a good time, and it was like, we should these and we decided to form a book club. And people have been in. So I've been married. I'll be married 25 years next year. I've been in a book club for 24 years, and have lived through it all. So anyway.
Wow. So how many, you don't have to say which ones, but how many of the things that happen in the play are things that have happened in your book club?
None of them, except for except for the fact of someone coming, like people being vetted or, yes. I mean, some of them on a small degree, but this is all, kind of, but the idea of how you form community and how you let people into the community, I think is something every group grapples with.
Yeah.
And we definitely grappled with that. And when I say none of it, that's not exactly true. There was a point where our book club broke in two and there was drama and, what books should we read? So no, there's none of it and all of it. It was just reinterpreted and repackaged. And I have to say my book club came to all the readings of this play. Like I have their full support of using the idea of a social group as a laboratory experiment for human interaction.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a great way to describe the play. That's wonderful. You talked a little bit earlier about your relationship with writing. What's your relationship with reading from childhood, I presume?
Yes, I was a huge reader. I was a voracious reader. And, I read a lot. I remember one of the worst days I ever had in my childhood was a day where I wasn't allowed to check out a book in third grade because I hadn't turned in some other book that I was in. It was like just, I still remember like those tears welling up in your eyes. One, because I was kind of yelled at, but B, because the idea that I couldn't take this book, this book about a duck, or I think it was about Molly Pritchett or Charlotte's Web, something that I couldn't take it home was like tragic. So I've always loved reading. I don't read as many of the book club books that I should. So I had to say I was voracious. I'm not as much as I used to be. I had trouble reading through the pandemic. Some of my friends threw themselves into reading. For me, it was a little harder and coming back to it. So it's been a lifelong relationship with some, intense, passionate, decades, and then some lesser ones, depending. And that's why I love having the book club, because it reminds me, it forces me to read books I might have not picked up myself and then discuss them, etc. So, you seldom regret reading a book. I can't say never, but you seldom do.
Your play finally got me to get all the way through Moby Dick. That was my project for the summer.
You learn a lot about harpoons.
Yes.
And human and obsession, right?
It's a fascinating book. Parts of it are so exciting and interesting and compelling and human, and then parts of it are just a slog.
Yeah.
I would tell people I've read Moby Dick, and they would be like, "Oh my God!" Right. People see that as an accomplishment in life.
Wait, well, when are you going to read Ulysses?
Oh well, I've read the first paragraph of Ulysses a dozen times in my life and always stop right there.
Yeah, it's hard. I have not read Ulysses, and if you haven't seen the play, or if you have, know that's a recurring
theme in the play. Yes. I wanted to ask you, when in the process of developing the play, did you add the element of there being a documentary film about the book club? Was that there from the beginning, or?
Yes. It was there from the beginning, because I thought it was a lab, like a laboratory. And this was I started writing this quite a while ago. So reality TV was just starting. The idea of documentary theater was still kind of now it's much more ubiquitous and all of that. But the idea of some kind of self-awareness, and the idea that when are we performing in our own lives, and when are we living it? And I think that's actually become a bigger question now as we do TikToks and totally. People, when are you being your authentic self, and when are you that's something, even back in the Renaissance and, the other times where people know there's a social thing that they present and who they are at home, but those things get blurry, especially when you're being captured in some way.
Yes. And when it's in your home, and it's wonderful to see the moments in the play where the characters forget that they're being filmed, and then suddenly remember. Does your book club eat a lot during the book club?
Oh, that's the main. That's really why we all get together. I mean, I mean, what I think is kind of moving about Indiana Repertory Theater doing this play now is that at the heart of it, it's a play about community, and it's a play about why do we, why does getting, it's not about, it's about the books, but it's more about why we read the books and what reading a book together can help you with in your journey. And so I found it really kind of beautiful that you picked, a comedy about the importance of community as your opening
well,
show.
That's exactly why it's so right for the opening of the show. I also have to mention, you mentioned the fact that what's special about us doing the play. The fact that one of the characters in your play is a pharmaceutical representative, and we are the home of Eli Lilly, the biggest pharmaceutical company and an important, powerful force in the town. And the fact that one of the characters talks about the State House, and the IRT is literally 2 doors down from the Indiana Capitol, right down the street. So it makes the play feel very much like it is actually set in Indianapolis, which is fun. Which is fun and makes it feel very personal. Folks, when you see the play, you'll see that besides the main storyline involving the characters in the play, there are also these little, as you would see in a documentary, little sort of talking head interviews. Where did that idea come from, Karen?
It's all from documentaries. I mean, what I did is I watched the documentary, and I was like, oh, they always have a pundit, and they're talking by an ugly tree or whatever, and they have their words come out about who they are, and they'll give an opinion about something. So the idea is this is supposedly a film documentary about books that's an ode to theater, because it's all theater, right? So it's all theater. So that's the idea of how do you make a film documentary work on stage? Well, it's very hard because there's no such thing as cut, so the actors have to change costumes quickly, etc. But we all know the format of a documentary, and so it just honors that. Even the credits, I don't know if you guys have that, but even the credits at the end.
We do. Okay. We do. It's fun. It's fun. And the way they've set up the beginning and the thing that you have it do at intermission, which is very funny. It's just delightful, all the interaction of those and the projections. We have a wonderful projection designer, Mike Tutai, who puts in those credits and then does these beautiful covers the stage with words from the books. It's just gorgeous. I can't wait for you to see it when it's streaming.
I know, I was so excited to see that. Not only can you go see it live, but those of us outside of state can come and join you virtually a little later down the line.
We had actors in last year's season, which was purely streaming, who had friends around the country or friends in Europe who had never seen them act, who got to see them act for the first time. It was a wonderful, wonderful thing. And it's so great, you can sit at home in your pajamas and watch it and drink and eat whatever you want. It's a delightful way to do theater. How did you choose the books that are in the play? Did the storyline lead you to the books, or did you pick books that led you to storyline?
Both. So, they are reading great American classics as they start out. So Moby Dick seemed like a perfect book to start out with, both because everyone knows what it's about, and yet not everyone has read them, so they had to be books that I didn't want anyone in the audience to feel, if you'd read it, wonderful. And if you hadn't read it, I didn't want them to feel lost. So that was kind of the modus. And I had actually, it's funny because there's the second book is The Age of Innocence by Edith Wharton, which I'm now adapting as a play, which is very hard to do because not very much happens in that book except a lot of restrained desire. So that has prompted other art. And then the other ones were there's a question at the crux of the play is about what's literature. what reading is okay and what isn't, and what is popular culture versus literature, where does it intersect, and when is it, and what is our relationship with that mean. So I had to think of books that were international phenomena, and so the other books are you hear them mentioned, and even though you haven't maybe read them, I've read them all, but even if you haven't read them, you know what they're about.
Well, I'll tell you, I told you I read Moby Dick. You also, this last weekend, in fact, I read not The Return of Tarzan, which is the play in the book in the play, but I did read Tarzan this last weekend, which was lots of fun.
It's a lot of fun. It's also problematic. It's
It's got so many issues.
It's got a lot of issues, but people, but that was more like a discussion of, pulp books to do something like that. And so that becomes, there's so many different forms of books, and people have different, levels of
different reactions
or snobbery or whatever.
Right. Well, right. That section where the character Alex talks about fine culture versus pop culture is so interesting, and it's so great. I felt very happy to hear someone say that on stage, because I feel that way very much. So that I love that part of the play. Speaking of Alex, he is the character who joins the book club in the middle of the play. You talked about that a little bit earlier. And I have to say, he doesn't come in until almost halfway through the play. And the first part of the play, you get to know the other characters, and it's coming along, and it's great, and it's so interesting. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, this new character appears. And it totally changes the play. It instantly changes the temperature in the room. And it just makes me think about how much a community is made up of the interaction of all the parts of it. And you throw a new ingredient in the pot, and suddenly it's a whole new flavor. It's a whole new stew.
Right.
It's really great. Was that, again, an idea that you had from the beginning, or was that something where you were writing along and suddenly thought, I need something new?
That's an idea I had at the beginning, because that was something that happened in our book club. And it was interesting about who wanted everything to stay the same, and who wanted, the reasonings for it. And I thought it was just a really interesting argument, because, the one given is change, right? And so
right.
I understand building trust and all of that there, but how do you open up and keep growing? And so there's good sides on good arguments on both sides about, who joins a group and who doesn't. But it's also, it's plagued by who've already been in the group, who's been left out. If you look at who the two newest members are, it's Lily, who is African American and kind of in the, the only African American and the only Black person in the room, and then Alex comes in, and he's also an outsider. So it has in it built in about which people have more access to certain groups than other people do, without talking about it. It's just, it's a metaphor in some way.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff that the characters don't necessarily talk about, but that like life. Well, that's a situation I've been in. That's an uncomfortable situation I've been in. And it's interesting to see how they resolve them or don't resolve them.
Right. And I mean, what happens a lot is people will come after the play and say, oh, I'm Jen. Oh, I'm Anna. Oh, my husband's Rob, or my husband, everyone. These are all the kind of archetypes that we've all met. You've met all of these people you've met all of these people in your life. So it's and how you react to them, in the sense that, and why the beginning is just the audience with the book club, and it's the idea that the audience starts feeling like they're a member of the book club. So when someone else comes in, it's a little bit, oh, okay, what's going to happen here? And we all know the second act goes bonkers. So,
which character are you?
Oh, I'm a combination of the three women. I'm definitely the three women combined. So I've got a little Anna, I've got a lot of Jen, and I certainly have Lily inside of me. So those three where I could, change who I was in that sense. My husband is definitely a Rob. So anyway,
I see a lot of Anna in myself. I'm kind of a control freak. Although as I've gotten older, I've become less so. But
and you mean well with it. You mean well with it. You just want everyone to have a really good time, and you know best how for people to have a good time.
Exactly. Maybe that's why I'm a dramaturg.
Yes.
The audience last night loved Rob.
He's so lovable.
He's so lovable. All the characters are just so warm and human and fun to hang around with. Okay, I have one last question for you, which is a question right out of the play, where the characters are asked, what book had the deepest impact on you when you were young?
Charlotte's Web. Charlotte's Web. I read Charlotte's Web, which is about a spider that is trying to make her writing make a difference in the world. And that made a huge impact on me. And I think I was in second grade when I read it, when she died at the end. I could not believe it. I went back and reread it, and I was shocked that she died a second time. I reread it. But yeah, Charlotte's Web, is a great book about the friendship and community and the power. I think the epitaph for Charlotte is she was a good friend and she was a good writer. And I hope that will be mine one day too.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Karen. It's just been delightful to meet you face to face after months of emails and things, and to meet you in person as opposed to meeting you through your characters, which is a wonderful thing to do with any playwright.
Well, I just also like to thank the cast and the crew and the director and the designers and the artistic and management and everyone at the theater. We all know that surviving this crazy pandemic has been really hard, and thank you for allowing me to be part of your reopening in this way, and for doing it so joyfully and so respectfully. And I really look forward to meeting the audiences in Indianapolis one day. I'm good friends with James Still, and he just sings the praises. So I'm so excited to be able to say, oh, I too get to hang out where James Still hangs out. So anyway.
We love James.
Thanks, everybody.
I'm sure most of you know this, but James Still is our playwright in residence. Thank you, Karen, again. It's just delightful. Everybody, the book club play by Karen Zacarías, now playing live on stage at the IRT through October 30th and available for streaming October 18th through 31st. So you have two choices about how to see the play, and they're both going to be excellent. Thank you very much, and have a great time watching the show, folks. Bye-bye.